Thank you, everybody, for another edition of Conversation with Coach Kevin. My name is Kevin Thornton. I'm a life coach and author. Today's episode is dear to me because the person I'm going to interview today, we have crossed paths without actually crossing paths. And those who know me know my story, where I was coached by Young Guns and her team about 13 years ago. And during that session, or those 9 weeks, that's when I realized my story and my divine assignment to become a life coach. That's how I become a life coach and becoming who I am right now. The man I'm interviewing right now is a coach. He's a trauma intervention expert. He is a media service coach as well. He does a lot of different things. He does a lot of different things well. But one of the things that brought me to him was he was on Iana's Fix My Life. And I saw the episode recently, and I had to go reach out to him because it triggered me because it brought me back to the days that I got coached. So I wanted to talk to him about his journey, his transition, and what he's doing right now. But also, we're going to talk a lot about trauma because we both know during our process of being coached that um, men and women, but especially our men, deal with a lot of traumas. We're going to discuss the traumas of like abandonment and molestation, amongst other things. So without further ado, I want to introduce everybody to Mr. Cory George. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, but can you hear me? Because my face is stuck. But can you hear me?
I can hear you. You just frozen. I can hear you though.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not. Yeah. So I'm not sure why I'm frozen because there's nothing else on. But hey, everybody. Hopefully everything will show up as. Let me see. Is my face showing still? Yeah, it's still
Yes,
the
you're
same.
basically.
So thank you for having me, and hopefully it'll sync up and you guys can see my mouth moving because it looks awkward right now. So so would it be best if I left and I came back in? Would that
Yeah,
probably help?
let's try that. No, there you go.
Oh,
Hold on.
okay.
There you go.
There we are. All right. So hi, so hi, people. Yeah. So it's always a pleasure to be able to have to have a worthwhile type of conversation that hopefully will galvanize these conversations in the home, which is one of the points of why I do what I do. Is growing up not having this space or the freedom to have these comfortable types of conversations in our culture. I feel exacerbated the things that I had gone through.
Okay.
Because when a person doesn't feel comfortable sharing, there's a lot that they may have to go through, and no one knows until it's way too late. And we want to talk about the fact that when you're not comfortable, you may not even have the skills on how to cope best with it. And this is why there's such a high connection between trauma and substance use, trauma and other types of behaviors, because we need comfort. So a
Mhm,
person that deals with trauma, what we're looking for is safety and
mhm.
comfort.
Absolutely. So before we get started on the trauma part, tell everybody how'd your journey begin into the world of coaching and trauma.
Uh, you know, um, to share some of my background, my experience with trauma started at a very young age. The first person that I consider my mother died so unexpectedly, and I was only 7. She was my grandmother, but she was the first person I remember as mother, and she was only 49. So that grief and the issue that I finally realized that my dad couldn't be there for me because that was his mother. So he lost his mother, and I'm asking him to, or I'm expecting him to be there for me when he's grieving the loss of his mother. So now putting those two things together, I realized that I had to give him grace because he was in grief also.
Hmm.
Then following my grandmother, and I always say you kind of know who is the glue in the family once somebody either leaves or passes away, right?
Hmm.
So she was a glue to our family. So a lot of things kind of fell to the wayside, even myself. So I started being shifted to different homes in different areas. And my experiences with childhood rape started kind of when I was 6, but when she died, it became more of a prominent thing because there wasn't anyone there to, I guess, kind of guard me or to kind of be my hero.
Hmm.
So that happened for about 6 years off and on with several family members. I was bullied, I was teased, I had a speech impediment, which was probably also exacerbated by the trauma. So there was a lot happening that I just had to cope with, right? And
Hmm.
then kind of looking at my first adult relationships, I can see how the unhealed portion of me was overruling those relationships.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I was probably 30 and I realized, okay, I'm tired of crying. I'm tired of not understanding why I'm struggling to find my success in uh, in these uh, these personal relationships. And I started to just kind of take a look back, and I started to work on myself. And I did it by myself, literally by
Mhm.
myself, which was also an inspiration to also work with others, because going through that alone and working through it and making all those mistakes and falling and having to rise again, falling and rising again, that was a lot by yourself. So I didn't want anyone else to, to feel alone. So I started mentoring and being an advocate for mental health, especially for the Black community, because I knew part of this was we that if you don't have the conversations at home, it's hard to understand what someone's going through, because that child or that person doesn't feel safe enough, or doesn't even feel that it's available to even talk about these things. So
Right.
we hold it in. And I knew that that was one of the biggest problems. Um, I'm so glad that I did not have the nature to turn to drugs and alcohol and other things, but there
Mhm.
were other things I turned to in ways that did not serve me well. And so again, I became a coach. Then I did a documentary in 2014
Okay.
called Whispers in the Night, which then landed the attention of Fix My Life. That's how it actually started.
Okay.
So that's why I was surprised as to when they called me. Well, no, it was a DM on Instagram on the eve of one of my birthdays, 8, 9 years ago, and I thought it was a practical joke. So I went to bed and I was laying down, and my phone kept buzzing, and it's like, please contact us. I'm like, okay, this is real. And I had first turned it down because I'm like, well, I'm in a more healed state. I want to give someone that space that really needs that work. They were like, no, but we think you'd be great. And mind you, they saw the documentary, so I was the facilitator of the documentary. So I was like, well, why me? Because I'm the one that's like the Oprah of my crew.
Right.
And so I got on the show, and I said one of the contemplations I had is I didn't want I was careful about how the story was told. So went on the show, filmed for 4 days. I would say the one of the biggest things I got from the show was meeting her. I realized that she's in this thing because she loves it,
Mhm.
and who she is off camera, pretty much the same on camera, and
Absolutely.
that there was a way to flow. And what I saw was a true commitment, to purpose that I don't think I had. And
Mhm.
there was a congruence, meaning her life was just her life. There was no difference between the on camera life and the off camera. It was more so,
Mhm.
this is a lifestyle. So what I
Yeah.
took from that afterwards was that if I'm going to be serious about what I want to do, I have to have a life that's more congruent with, if folks see me in public versus at home, I should mostly be the same person. Now we
Mhm.
code switch at times because of the setting, right? But there's an
Mhm.
authentic part of us that should be there at all times, because that shows that you are comfortable with who you are,
Absolutely.
and that if no one else accepts it, that's fine, or those who should accept it will. So that's what I got out of the show. But also, the show also showed me that so I was the oldest, I think. So they deemed me the elder. That was a role I'm used to because I have 6 siblings and I'm the
Mhm.
oldest. So in essence, it kind of highlighted how it was easy for me to forego my own needs for
Mhm.
the needs of those who I was taking care of. And it really came in handy because there were things that you guys didn't see on the show, and it was when the cameras were gone that we'd have these extensive talks, and I was the leader of the talks. um and would I do it again? Yes. Would I absolutely ask for things to be done just a little differently? Yes. But I knew the conversation would spark a lot of talks and debate. You
Mhm.
had comments that were not favorable, which kind of shows the mentality of where folks were.
Mhm.
And it further showed me that these conversations are important. So one of my mantras in my work, whether it's on camera or off camera, is let's make those tough talks more comfortable in the household.
Absolutely.
And being a father, that's one of my mantras, is if my kids can't talk about it with me, why should I expect them to be able to talk about it outside the house?
Right.
So that's where I'll start. And so then I was an I was an IT engineer for up to 20 years.
Okay.
But when I realized I wanted to do this thing, I said the only way I can do this is if I go back to school and become damn near an expert, because there's one thing to have passion behind what you do. But I
Hmm.
know with mental health, but you can say the wrong thing or guide them the wrong way, and you be the culprit of their demise. And that's what I did not want to do. And say, yes,
Right.
I have the passion and fire, but do I have the expertise to guide you?
Hmm.
So I got my second degree, quiet and also quiet as it's kept. I'm also pursuing my doctorate in trauma right now, because I wanted to make sure that when I spoke, that if I have authority and I have influence, I know that, right? So when you know
Hmm.
you have influence, it's up to you to use that in the way that it's not about you, but it's
Hmm.
about, if I can reflect upon people that are paying me mind, let me do them justice. So that's where I am today.
First of all, congratulations on working on your doctorate. And what you said is very true. Because people ask me all the time, is who she is in person the same as she is on TV now? I would say yes. You know,
Hmm.
uh, there's no acting in her. It's This is truly who she is. Like you said, this is her passion. And so once I did my experience, it was like, okay, not only do I have to do the work on knowing what I'm talking about, but I also got to
Hmm.
do the work on myself to make sure I am secure in myself. Because if I'm not, so I won't be putting on one face for the masses, but then while I'm behind closed doors, I'm doing something completely different. I'm not.
Absolutely.
So I completely agree with you with what you just said. Um, so I do a lot of coaching for our men, our black men, and
Hmm.
one of the things that I know you are aware of too is two of the traumas that we're gonna really talk about, that not only the black men but women as well deal with a lot of, is abandonment.
Okay.
And um, they don't really realize that it affects them until later in age. Like they get to like late 20s into their 30s, they start to realize that it's more to the issues that they have at hand than, when it comes down to relationships in general. So can you speak to the audience about how does abandonment really affects the children when they grow up and become adults?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that abandonment is a deeply felt feeling. It's a deeply felt emotion. Usually in childhood, we don't have the coping skills or enough experience to, discern. Oh, so dad left, but that's dad's problem, not mine. Mom left, but that's mom's problem. I did nothing wrong. I'm a child. I deserve nurture. I deserve support. I deserve guidance.
Mhm.
And especially if no one is there to also help you understand. Because sometimes what happens is when a parent leaves, even if the other parent is also offended by the departure. So let's
Mhm.
say a parent is bitter because the dad left, saying things like saying things like you just like your dad, or mom, and especially when they're mad at you, when they're constantly bringing it up. There are times where a parent may say, um, you know, I do so much for you, and your mom or dad is gone. That's a reminder. That's a
Mhm.
reminder, and so the abandonment becomes a further weapon. Now, it's different if uh, if the person caring for that child says, "Listen, I know your mom, dad, or someone important left your life, but that has nothing to do with you, and it wasn't your fault. They could not
Mhm.
handle their own responsibility, and in a way, they are also abandoning. It's not like they're abandoning the person; they're abandoning their responsibility towards the person. So those are
Mhm.
two different things, right?
Right.
So if you're told this as a child and it is retold to you so many times, you start to understand as a child, because we learn based on habit, based on routine, based on so many things. And then the way that it looks, if it's not reconciled, is you can have what's called an anxious attachment. Well, I'm sorry, but an anxious avoidant type of attachment, where you're anxious for it, but then when
Mhm.
it feels way too close, when it feels too good, you can walk out of it, because the fear is, I'd rather leave you before you leave me again.
Mhm.
So it can show up in those ways. So whereas they may crave the closeness, they combat it with the feeling of, I don't know what that closeness may feel like, especially if it's especially if it's a relationship that reminds them of that parent or that person that may have left their life. And I'll say this for example. So let's say it's a woman and her dad left early
Mhm.
age, and but that affects her. And if she's having a heterosexual type of union, and she may have a hard time with men. She may
Mhm.
have a hard time trying to trust men because, hey, my dad left. I don't know if you leave. If the man also says or does things that also reminds them of their dad, even if it's not an abandoned type of way, that can also show up in, oh my God, he or she may leave. And even if they don't check out, they may be desperate in the ways that they want to hold on to that. Or they may be triggered in a way that can look unjustifiable with the person that they're having that experience with. But for them, they want to feel safe. So they may
Mhm.
go through extreme odds trying to feel safe. But they may feel a heightened sense of jealousy or insecurity as well
Mhm.
too in their relationship as well. So we have to look at the way that it shows up in your whole adult life and how it frames your whole your way of having your bonds in your adult life, because we thrive based on healthy relationships in our whole adult life.
Mhm.
So once we finish childhood, our goal is to be so prepared in a good way that most likely we'll have more successful types of things happen in the adult life. So I hope I kind of hit those
Yeah,
questions for you.
they did. One thing you were saying too, like, I had a couple guys that were like I mentored, and they were in their late 20s, early 30s, and they gravitated towards me because they were looking for like that father figure,
Hmm.
and um, and I noticed as the relationship started to grow closer in our in the bond that they tended to self sabotage the relationship.
Hmm.
They because they it's like you said, I'm going to I'm going to I'm gonna make I'm do something to end this relationship so I can hurt you before you hurt
Hmm.
me. And it got to the point they tried it. The one person tried, and then he came back and apologized. I said, you have to be understanding that if you really want this relationship, you have to be secure enough to understand that I'm not going to hurt you. If I haven't done anything so far to show you that I'm going to hurt you, you can't trust me, then no, you could trust me. But that's going to be something you have to be able to deal with and believe in
Hmm.
yourself. And that has been like the hardest thing for them. Most of the ones that have, most of the guys that have come past me, whether I've coached them or I've mentored them, that didn't have a father, that's been like the hardest part for them is to trust someone like you or I, that we won't hurt them because they crave that male
Hmm.
love and that male attention. Even if we're, you know, giving them constructive criticism,
Hmm.
they still love it because it's coming from a man that they feel cares about them, right? But then they'll get scared at the same moment because they can feel themselves actually truly care for this person, but they're also scared and they don't believe they deserve it for one, and then two, they believe at like, okay, I don't want to get hurt again. No, my father already hurt me. I don't
Well,
want him to hurt me as well. Go ahead.
Well, the key to this is two things, because we have to see that for some people that is a traumatic experience. So
Hmm.
when a person experiences trauma, they have to cope. And so when you have a sense of unsafeness, that's a trigger, and their trauma responses show up. So when they self-sabotage, that can be the well, it could be fight and or flight response.
Hmm.
Meaning I'm fighting it, so my confrontation towards it is to reject it. So now so now I run away, I abandon, or I I become avoiding of it. And so what I tell clients is that's your discomfort showing up. How do we how do we sit through the discomfort? Because in order to heal that, you're gonna have to feel it just a little
Hmm.
bit. So my advice is when you feel the discomfort, ask yourself, what is it telling me? Because there's some lies
Hmm.
happening in the mind. There's some lies happening in the mind.
Hmm.
That discomfort is saying, oh, this is ugly, and it's bringing up a memory. All right. So now that we know that's bringing up a memory that is not in real time, how How can I help you process that memory? Because it's the traumatic memory that's popping up that then shows up and says, I need to run away from this because I don't like this feeling. And then, secondly, as men, we're not always equipped to allow ourselves to be nurtured because growing up, it for some of us, especially in our culture, we're all about achievement. Hey, so we play sports, you get your trophy, you get the accolades, and we kind of love on you in a different way, but we may not hold you as emotionally responsible. Or if we do, we may say, okay, okay, so don't cry, and boys don't cry, you got to fight it out, you got to hold it in. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the favorite phrases I like to tell people is, we are taught to take things on our chin,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not taught to take it off our chin. So at some point, all we do is accumulate, and our chin is this long, and it becomes unbearable and heavy. So now
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what to work on first because we have all these issues that but that we've piled on. So now my job as a trauma guy is to help you sift through all those stories and find out which one was a catalyst for the smaller ones to look so big, because whatever you're holding on to it's like it's the muddy glasses. It's the muddy
Mm-hmm.
glasses, meaning you have your glasses and they have the mud on it, so you can only see just pieces of what actually is happening in the present.
Right.
So my goal in the work I do is to give a definition to what they're feeling, because some guys don't have words.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about what this is feeling. Talk about what this is also reminding you of, and let's get some better type of cognition. Because if your dad left you at 8 and you're 48,
Mm-hmm.
you may respond as the 8-year-old, because once you're
Yeah.
triggered, it takes you back. So what you may not realize is that those grown men are acting like the kids that had to run away or had to also protect themselves. So how do we then talk towards that young kid now? So now we have to sometimes change our language, because in the trigger, I'm not talking with a grown man that has two, or well, that may but that lawyer that may be triggered. I'm talking with the 10-year-old
Mm-hmm.
that does not have that education, that does not have the wherewithal. So I want to sometimes even invite the older version to talk to his younger version as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it depends on who it is, right? So sometimes I
Right.
want to empower them that they have the tools. Tell that young man what he should know about that whole abandonment thing. Tell him what you know now about why you think that person left you. Is it because of you, or is it because they abandoned their whole responsibility towards
Right.
you? And that's a different language. So it really is about, how do we have the conversations that elicit those responses that will change the cognition of what they believe of what happened.
Mm-hmm. And now, can you speak on the fact that the abandonment also plays a part a lot of times on their self-esteem and
Absolutely.
their self-worth and the need of validation?
Absolutely. Because young men, especially if there's men around, when you are, and I'll talk about men and or women or anything, but it's like, and I know men because that's what I work with, but
Mm-hmm.
you have a young man that his dad isn't there, and you want someone to show up at your football games. You see everyone else's dad, that's yay, yay, that's my son, all this. And yes, your mom is there, and you can be both grateful that she's there, but also feel a way that your dad is not there.
Mm-hmm.
I had a stepdad growing up, and I could not appreciate him fully because I was still waiting on my dad to show up in the way that my stepdad was. And once I understood that I could have my stepdad because he's here and still hold my dad responsible, I finally allowed my stepdad to show up in the way that he's always been there, and I could welcome it.
Right.
Um, and so it I feel like, well, not say I feel, but it's kind of shown that fathers validate their son's entrance into manhood. They
Mm-hmm.
assure them that they're doing okay and that they're navigating fine. And it's a course correction as well, too, that can be
Mm-hmm.
there. Moms can do their best. And some moms have been absolutely successful, right? But if that child is holding on to that fantasy or holding on to that need, it's not the mom's. Mom is sort of not as equipped, because it's not about you, mom, and it's not discounting your work. It's saying that if you recognize that this child needs that, maybe at that time we can look at mentors. We can look at someone early on in age that says, "Oh, I can try to take your child under my wing in a safe way." That way the child still gets that validation. But if not, all the validation and affirmation that we need growing up, that need doesn't go away. Those needs becomes wounds and injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So once you become an adult, that wound needs healing. So you may need a lot more validation and affirmation than the average person, and you may also tend to also resort to different ways of getting it that may not be as productive for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we can see where folks may get into sex addiction, gambling,
Mm-hmm.
different things, because it's not really as affirming as we think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are hormones working and making you believe that it's validation. But once you finish that and you go back towards your baseline of back towards your baseline of operating, you'll find that that need is still there.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny you said that because a lot of the guys that I deal with, that's their truth. You
Hmm.
know, especially the ones that's single.
Yeah.
Um, they they seek their validation through women,
Hmm.
and but like you said, once the act is over with, and they back to their normal day to day,
Hmm.
they still are in need of validation.
Yeah.
And then it's funny to me because whether it's me or you, if I say to one of them in a call, I'm like, you know what, Corey, I'm really proud of you and the the growth you have shown in these past few months we've been working together. I'm really proud of you. I want you to know that.
Hmm.
That touches them in a way and validates them in a way that any sex could never have done for them.
Hmm.
And um, and I think that's when I see how they respond. I said, that's what you're looking for right there.
Hmm.
I said, you never had a male figure to tell you how proud they are of you. You don't even care if I correct you because that triggers you as well because you never have a male figure to also
Yeah.
correct you in a positive way to let you know, okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do better to be a man.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the part that they need to understand. And I think if women, because I want to talk about that too, because I think if women understood that part as well, they might be a little bit more understanding because a lot of these men that they're seeking are broken men who pretty much emotionally are little kids at heart, like you said. And they
Yeah.
might be 30 years old, but when it comes down to emotions, they're probably like 10 or 11. So they're not going to know how to act or emote as
Well,
an
I'm glad you
adult.
said that, because here's why. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But this is
so,
why women
so
often complain that it's almost like raising a second child.
mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard me or not, because I know that we were talking. It was kind of,
Yeah. I heard you. Yeah. And I agree
yeah,
with
but
you.
yeah. So this is why women often say that having a man is like raising a second child. Yes, he's accomplished. He can go ride a horse. He can go build a house in the backyard. But when it comes to those emotions, it's like raising that third child. And you are correct, because if anybody is emotionally immature, it becomes the job of the partner to try to supplement. But here's the thing I want to tell your followers is that no amount of overcompensation often actually shows a person that they need to start to up their compensation. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do that. So women and even men have to have their standards of how they want to be treated and the things that they will accept, and
Mm-hmm.
say, no, yes, I like you, but I can't parent you. That's not my job.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why for men it's very important to understand that. And this is why some men have a hard time, especially when like even in COVID, for example, if you lost your job or you can't work, and so for men in most cases, and even in our culture, we feel valuable when we are productive. So if
Right.
you take that away, and especially if it's not something you earned, so like retirement or something, okay, at that time you kind of do want to change and you want to rest a little bit and maybe work when you want to. But if it's something that is forced upon you, and if your ideals were shaped by those values growing up, thinking, your mom and dad told you that you need to be the best provider. Well, that's a productivity thing. But what other values are they going to teach you as a man, saying, but you also need to be kind and also considerate, and you need to also be able to know how to talk about your feelings. That's not an often type of talk that young black men have. So we
Mm-hmm.
grow up with this thing of we need the accolades because that's what we're primed for. It's ego-based living. It's
Mm-hmm.
totally ego-based. So when you take away the accolades or the uh, or the feeling of achievement, you have a child.
Right.
So when he goes through his feelings, which every human does, you may find that at the height of but I can see where folks do feel like they become more avoided and dismissive because they don't know
Mm-hmm.
what to do, or they may not even know how to tell you about their feelings. Because a
Right.
woman is often raised as a nurturer. So to nurture, you have to know feelings. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
to learn feelings. So there is cases where some marriages fall apart because things look okay until you hit the fan and the emotional responses are blunted. And how do we fix that? It's not my responsibility as a partner, to heal you. I can support your healing process, and I
Mm-hmm.
need to know that you're in the healing process, so I can accept you when you're trying to pull those pieces back together.
Right.
But it's not my job to fix you, even though I'm highly skilled. I don't want to fix my partner. I didn't sign up to fix people, well, partners. I get paid to fix people.
Right.
Now, but if you ask me a question, I will be there for you because I have the expertise. But I don't want to be in session with my partner. I can support things. I can
Mm-hmm.
really be there. And if you ask me a question, yes. But I'm
Right.
not going to sit there and say, "Hey, babe," and so let's talk about this issue we had, and let's talk about some skills I would like to teach you.
Right.
That's a lot. That
It
is a
is a
lot.
lot. It is.
And so it is our responsibility because even though I was abused, I was abandoned, I had all these things happen as an adult, it's now my job
Mm-hmm.
to shape the life that I want. So now I can talk about any of those issues and I don't flinch. Why? Because they're my stories. And it's about not trying to change the story, it's about changing how you receive the story and
Mm-hmm.
how you tell your story back to yourself. So the
Right.
story doesn't have to change, but how do you see it? And
Mm-hmm.
that's how even in talk therapy we try to take the clients through what's happened and recognize where there's some faulty thinking
Mm-hmm.
and help to fix those thinking errors. And then at some point when you tell the story, you also inject that new way of thinking, and it's not even a lie, it's just a way of you understanding that as an adult I can now see this differently now.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a kid, I can offer myself that whole thing of, yes, I understand it as a kid. I thought how kids think. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I was 8. Now I'm 38 and I'm still single or I'm having these horrible relationships. How can I now change how I think about that as an 8-year-old?
Absolutely. So I want to transition into still relationships, but now, as you see on social media, the gender wars, the men versus the women, and to me, it's like you have both
Mm-hmm,
genders who are majority of us is, who have these gender wars are the younger ones that are a lot of them are probably missing the male figure. The girls, women miss the father to teach them to show them what a man is.
mm-hmm,
You got the men who don't have the father to teach them how to be a man. And so now they're going to the streets, they go to the radio and
mm-hmm.
let music and everything else tell them how they should be as men and as women. And now we got this war going on about, you know, who's the best and who need to do what. What's your thoughts on that whole situation?
I, and one thing we can say if it's a missing parent, but we could also say that the parent who's also available also still has some power to also influence as
Mhm.
well.
Right.
Um, my kids and I, we talk about a lot of things. So my kids are not often influenced by outside stuff though, because you got to start that young. Because I knew that we didn't have a talking relationship in my family. I knew
Hmm.
that when I had the responsibility of having kids, my job was to have a talking family, whether it's
Hmm.
uncomfortable or not. And
Right.
so, and I literally just said this in a group I was talking to before I got online is that my job is to love my kids so well that when you leave my nest, I set your barometer high on how you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
So that was my job. So if my kids are out there having horrible relationships, I got to ask myself, what did I not set up properly? Now,
Hmm.
mind you, people will do what they choose. Even if you have the foundation that is great, some people still go out there and do stuff that is not in accordance with what they were taught.
Right.
But that does not mean that the material is still not there.
Right.
And you get to pick and choose when you use it. So as much as I love all my kids, at some point, but they're still going to do what they choose to do.
Hmm.
But they also know that those lessons are still there. I believe that it is about now. Social media is for some people their reality, especially with younger kids. Their virtual life is their reality. So sometimes parents have to enter their virtual life and see what their kids are seeing. Kids are being, chased online, trafficked online, bullied online. And if you don't know your kids' online presence, then you're doing a disservice.
Right.
Um, Kids should have some autonomy, but they're still kids. So when my kids were younger, yes, I did monitor things. Yes, I did go in your room and looked under your bed. Because why? Because I pay rent here, and you are a child, and so some things you may not even know are divisive because of your mentality. You don't know yet. It's fair. And also a child's brain is also developing in lightning speed during certain ages. So the things that they are, so the way the brain works is whatever's not being stimulated, it prunes away. So let's say a child is being abused often, because that part is being stimulated in the brain, those connections in the brain are stronger than the fair treatment. So that's why sometimes a person may may be more responsive to unfair ways of being treated because it's familiar. But that does not mean that they like it. It means that at least I know what that is. At least I built up the coping skills
Hmm.
to deal with that, which is more predictable. That's why some people run from something that feels good. Why? I don't know what this is. I'm not so used to this. I don't know what's coming, even though I know I want it. Because there's a
Right.
part of mine that says, I know I want this, but the overriding part of the part that's gotten used to the abuse or used to the maltreatment or used to being abandoned says, but this is the overriding factor though, because I've
Right.
gotten used to those feelings. So this is why some people can be in the midst of something wonderful and blow it up, is because part of them needs to then revert back to something that they're used to, which is a whole catastrophe.
Right.
And then, and they go through the cycle of guilt and shame and regret and then do it all over again because their cycle is happening. And how do we stick a pin in the cycle and say, wait a minute, how do we stop this cycle and inject some therapy, inject some conversation,
Hmm.
inject some way of understanding what that means for you. And it's not about judgment. It's about, I don't know what's going on in that person's mind.
Right.
My goal is to help them understand it, because sometimes we're on autopilot and do
Hmm.
not even realize that there's a cycle happening here, and then we blame the other people. But no, but if you lost the same type of person 4 different ways, baby, it's you, it's not them.
Absolutely.
And being a coach first and then now being a trauma expert, I integrate the coaching and the trauma work, and it's like, yeah, we have some really good types of conversations, so
Yeah.
it can be quite deep.
So the second most important, most impactful uh, trauma that I realized once I got coached by Ian, but once I also started coaching myself is abandonment, and that's something that we as a community don't like to talk about a lot of, but it happens a lot. And I know that I've had clients who been abandoned me, have been molested. Um, it's not talked about.
Hmm.
Uh, they still haven't told their parents.
Yeah.
Um, and but in that they are very hypersexual, and there's like there is they could say they love somebody, but the person does not have, a lot of times don't even have the sexual appetite to keep
Hmm.
up with that person who has been molested. And so they go and they to other people to try to fulfill that appetite, but yet they feel that they are in love with this other person, but yet they're cheating on them because that person cannot keep up with them sexually. So
So
can you?
so let me ask you, because I wanted to kind of put a pause because I want to make sure I understand you correctly.
Uh,
Are you saying that the sexual appetite of the survivor or the
the
other
survivor,
partner?
yeah, the survivor
So
of
are
the
we
molestation.
saying that? So are we saying that the sexual appetite of the survivor is enhanced?
Yes.
So let's put that there because I deal with a lot of facts and logic being in the space I am. That's
Hmm.
partly true,
Hmm.
but there's also sexual dysfunction because some people also respond to lack of intimacy and having problems with intimacy because if you are if sex is shown in your life at age 6 and 7 like me, I
Hmm.
don't have the comprehension to process that properly. So it can go either way. Some
Okay.
people are highly promiscuous because it could be that sex turns into that thing that they value because that's what they were shown. That,
Hmm.
oh, if I like you, then I guess we have to have sex. So sometimes the sex is not about being so compulsive. It is, oh, if I like you, then I guess we have to have sex because that's what happened in the past. Uh,
Hmm.
so it could be a mix of things, but some people are turned off by sex, whereas it's not as frequent. And especially if you have psychological blocks during sex, it can really cause a problem. So I don't want to put it out there that that's usually the case because we
Hmm.
have altering ways of those experiences showing up for different people. Like myself, I was asexual for a while, and it was kind of weird because um, sex was introduced in a way that it wasn't favorable for me.
Okay.
But I also believe that if you like me, then I guess I have to do something. So it wasn't always, oh my God, I'm into it. It's like, okay, I like you. Then I guess that's how we show we like each other. Then we have sex. So I want
Right.
to make sure that we paint the picture that there's a myriad of different ways that that effect shows up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, how do you, as a trauma expert, deal with molestation within the for the survivor, especially when we are in a community that we don't want to talk about it?
Well, there's several things because for the culture, I go into values first. What are your spiritual values? What are your personal values? What are the values passed down from your family? What are the things that you hold near and dear that may affect how you see your abuse? Some people don't come forward, like especially men, because I'll look. Here's a classic example, and this is a truth. Growing up in church, I I first learned that men having sex with men, you're going straight to hell. There was no conversation about rape and rape and being touched and also molested being the caveat that will save you from hell, right?
Hmm.
So if I feel that I've already been raped by a man and in my head at 6 or 7, that must be sex because if a man lays with a man and I'm thinking logically as a 6 year old, okay, I did lay with a man, even though it's by force, I'm going to hell. So why would
Hmm.
I share? And then that also can turn into self torment because I'm going to hell. Then that can turn into how do I ease the anxiety of that guilt? Oh, I turn to drugs and alcohol. I turn into more sex. I try to overprove my sexuality, meaning if I'm a straight man and I was also molested by men, I can't tell because I'll be afraid that somebody thinks I'm gay. So let me go and have more sex. So the sex and the compulsion may not even be for the reasons we think. It can be so the person can feel validated in their own mind.
Hmm.
So it's not always about I want sex. Subconsciously, it could be because I need to prove that I'm a man. And so again, we talk about values. Some of the values we have may be the downfall of us.
Hmm.
Meaning, for example, if the value is we keep everything at home, how does that serve
Hmm.
you if the abuse is happening in the home?
Right.
How does that serve you if no one at the home is capable of helping you to
Hmm.
deal with it? So that's a value that we have that's in our culture, that's in other cultures as well too. But it came
Hmm.
from slavery, meaning if I'm being abused by my slave master, who do I tell? I you
Right.
know I can't tell somebody else because we don't have black therapists. There's nothing there that helps us mentally. So
Right.
those values they can be passed down, but also be highly antiquated, meaning they don't serve us well. So that's where I start is why do you feel that way? Because it could be because of values first, and how do we work on the values? Because there's some things we don't want to take away, but we
Hmm.
ask, are those values serving you well now? And what new values can you have that can also support your healing? So that's big for our culture. You talk about spirituality, you talk about values at home, you talk about values in your community that could be different too. Because if you're in the hood, those hood values are very different than if you go into another part of town because
Mhm.
you want to have that hood cred, right?
Right.
So because and the fortunality of me is I was raised in the hood too. I was
Mhm.
raised in poverty off and on, so I can speak that language. And you see how my tone changed once I,
Right.
you know, that's what we have to be. Is like I can't be absent from all the influences that I saw growing up that may have shaped how I saw myself as a young black boy. I thought I didn't think I was a woman, but I didn't trust men.
Right.
So this is why, although I went to college for what 4 or 5 times, I'm not. I don't have a frat thing going on because I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I would measure up. Then there's the whole thing of feeling like I'm some type of imposter, which is very big
Mhm.
for victims. They can have imposter syndrome. We can have anxiety and depression, all these things, especially if we don't talk about them.
Right.
So my work starts with what is holding you back? What
Okay.
has been holding you back? And that's where the gates open at.
Now, what would you say to them if it was a man who came to you and he was molested as a child, and he was molested by his mother's boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
and he had the strength enough to tell his mother that his boyfriend molested him, and she confronted the boyfriend. The boyfriend said that's a lie, and she chose to believe the boyfriend over the child. How do you Where do you start with that situation for that survivor?
I think for me, I would want to validate first that listen, your mother's choice of choosing that man had nothing to do with the fact that you did suffer. I want to help them to understand that her choice had nothing to do with what he or she deserved. That although that happened and it came from someone you cared about, I understand why that hurts you so very much. I understand why this may influence how you see women. I understand that. So to validate that those experiences are highly, that they can highly influence how you see a whole stretch of people. So now, if you meet a woman who may remind you of your mother, I can see why you'd be highly apprehensive. I can see why sometimes men will abuse a woman or not respect them if they have a deep seated type of disdain. It doesn't excuse it, but I
Right.
can see why that would have happened. So for me, it's about validation first. That happened. Let's validate that, and I want to show you how you can validate it without the need for someone else to. That's the first thing I do is validate that their experience is real and that what they experienced as a result was not something that that they deserve. Yet it did hurt them.
Okay. So as we get closer to the end, I do want to ask you from your perspective, and
Mhm.
by the time this is uploaded onto on the internet, we will have a new president.
Mhm.
So, what do you tell the listeners about what kind of work they should do to work on themselves as we come into this new regime? Because it's trauma that's going to be happening, as we transform into a new president. So, what would you recommend they do?
Well, I said this today. Well, actually, because we filmed this earlier, but what I said online, and I'll post this today, is that especially if you feel like you are part of a marginalized sector of the population, whole, or if after the whole process of this that you will be marginalized, that's a stressor for people.
Hmm.
People who have experienced racism and or the appearance of racism, even if it's a perception. But your brain says, if I think that this is racism, I will respond in kind that way. So if you feel like you will experience a heightened sense of that or a heightened sense of anything that made you feel marginalized in any way, that can drive up your anxieties like today, or your feelings of depression because you don't know what's coming after the election. So what I try to tell people is try to find things that you still enjoy about your life.
Hmm.
um, be careful of how much social media and news you watch because it's all the same thing happening over and over and over again. The
Yeah.
fear of missing out is big. So you're not going to miss anything. So, for example, folks were asking me why I did not watch any of those debates. Why would I invite somebody that I don't like into my household through my TV? Why would I do that to
Mhm.
myself? I
Absolutely.
I can read the clip notes because somebody's going to talk about it anyway, right?
Right.
It's like this whole thing I talk about on my cell phone. I say, like, if I'm going to like if I'm having a confrontation on my phone, I've told people, listen, what you're not going to do on the phone that I pay for on this end is to talk crazy towards me on my phone on this end of this line. So I hang
Right.
up. Why? Because I have control over
Right.
what I see, over what I ingest. I voted. I don't talk about it. There was a
Right.
family thread that were talking about Miss Harris in it, like, saying bad words. I said, well, you can share your point, but you don't have to, you know, downgrade someone just to make a point.
Right.
And someone else was talking in the thread saying, hey, let's not talk politics. And I kind of flexed a bit. I said, so as your family-based trauma expert, I'm going to have to say we should stop the conversation because we don't know how it's affecting someone else on this thread. And so they got silent because I said, I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. I will not text in this thread today, and I will have it muted because I have control over what I ingest. So
Right.
this and this has been one of probably the most volatile seasons. You
Yeah.
have a white man running and a black woman.
Hmm.
There's so much misinformation that I tell people, if you're going to base your choice on something, and also being a doctoral student, I'm very big on evidence-based stuff now. So I
Right.
don't rely on anything that I can't fact check. So the hearsay stuff, I'll ask you, so where'd you get that from?
Right.
So answer who told you? Because unless you give me the source, especially if it doesn't sound right and I can't find the source, I reject it. And this is what I teach folks in their healing. You have a right to now reject anything that doesn't work well for you.
Right.
So that's how I would handle it. And even myself, I've not watched any type of debate. I've watched the cliff notes what I need, and I do my research on the candidates, and I make my choice. So therefore, yes, I'm worried. This could happen at any moment. I find out that the person I don't want to be in office is in office.
Hmm.
You know, I have to also be as stern about how I show up tomorrow because it's going to be a whole new day.
Right.
So again, it's about thinking how can you best serve yourself in this time, and it's not to turn towards substances and alcohol and sex. It's about how can I think about my wellness right now because this is the space and time. I'm because I have all kind of texts on my phones right now about friends being anxious. Yes, I know
Mhm.
that. Now that you know you're anxious, go walk outside for a while. Go and walk in nature and look at the things that you had no power over, but that you can still enjoy. Go and have a nap. Turn off that TV and play a board game. Talk to your friends about something that has nothing to do with this. Do things that make you feel better
Mhm.
because you're going to need it.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you for being on my show. I truly appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Before I let you leave, I want you to end the show by because everybody wants to say they want to be healed. Um, I don't think everybody is aware of the hard work it is to for the healing. So can you, as we get ready to go into 2025, I know everybody says they want to they want to be healed, they want to have to be in peace.
Mhm.
Can you can you speak to them on their journey of healing so they have a clear understanding of what they're in store for if this is what they really want for 2025?
Absolutely. I would say this healing will hurt a little bit. It may hurt a lot of bit or a little bit, but you can't heal it until you feel it just a little bit.
Hmm.
Even in talk therapy, we have to bring up stuff that you probably have been safe enough to not talk about. But the things we don't talk about shows up in our thinking, with which then shows up in our behavior. So everything you think you're hiding, someone is feeling it somewhere from you.
Hmm.
Anything you think you're hiding, it is showing up in, even if you're not conscious of it, it's showing up in how you treat someone else or how you allow yourself to be treated. But healing will hurt just a little bit. But the pain of having to live through it has hurt you more. Think of the losses of the things you have not tried yet. Think of the risk not taken that you should have taken. Think of those things that are on the back burner because You're just a little bit scared, and that's understandable. But I want them to also know that you are complex. You're
Mhm.
not difficult, you're complex. And when
Mhm.
you understand that you are meant to be as complex as possible, you will let yourself breathe a little bit, but that we're here to help you. And if you can't do it by yourself, there are people who are highly trained, highly loving, highly kind, who are willing to walk with you safely and take you through things in a way that's safer than you can do on your own. And there
Absolutely.
are and there are black male therapists, counselors, and experts like myself who are here. There's a lot of us who want to do the work with you because we understand. I was raised in the hood, but I was also raised in the country.
Mhm.
I've seen racism. I was racially profiled 3 times by the age of 14 back home. So I know what that feels like. So when people may have an assumption of how I show up and not understand that there's a reason why, um, it's a disservice if they don't if they don't allow themselves that room to have partnership. And sometimes people feel safer being alone. That's only because the partners that they had growing up did not serve them well. So I'd rather be alone. It's all about
Right.
safety. What are you doing that is so extreme just to feel safety that you're blocking yourself out of your life?
That is very true. I want you to give everybody your social media information, your website, so
Mhm.
if they want to reach out to you, they can do so. And I will put it
So,
into our description as well.
no, that's fine. My website is CoryGeorge.com. Just make sure it's no E in Cory. It's Cory, Cory George.com. You can follow me on Instagram, which is one of my bigger spaces. It's Cory George Cares, because that's really the mantra of where I am right now. And on TikTok, it's Cory George 73. So I'm doing a new series called Trauma Talks, and it'll be some things but then I'll post every week to
Mhm.
help educate us as a culture on trauma, educate us on ways that we can help ourselves and ways that we can also offer our own support towards others who may be suffering as well.
All right. Once again, thank you so much for being on my show. I truly appreciate you. Keep up the amazing work that you're doing, and I have a happy New Year. If I don't talk to you again,
Thank you very much.
have a great one now.
All right.
Peace.
Bye bye.